Well, good evening, everyone. Tonight, I wanted to. I've been meaning to do some episodes that weren't just freight based. I've been showing you loads that I haul, and that's important. You know, I wanted you guys to see the types of stuff I'm hauling, but I definitely wanted you to see the different types of freight that I'm hauling, so that when we start getting into the start getting in depth in the nitty gritty of what Specialized is about and how to do it, you'll have a little better understanding of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about it. So tonight, what I'd like to do, there's a couple subjects I'd like to cover tonight. So there are two subjects I want to cover. The first one is the basic stuff you're going to need in order to haul Specialized. And number two, I wanted to go over permits, to talk a little bit about how to read a permit, what to look for on a permit, how to follow a permit, some of the tools you need that help you understand your permit and understand what you have to have and what you don't have to have. That is probably crucial. Before you even take a load, you're going to need to understand those rules in order to know if what you're getting paid on that load is correct or not. So I think probably most importantly here is to define what Specialized is. Specialized is actually defined as the movement of commodities or goods that cannot otherwise be moved in a conventional manner. Specialized, because my personal definition of Specialized is anything that requires special attention. I wouldn't necessarily define just what I do as Specialized. I personally, there's levels of Specialized in my opinion. I actually operate on what I would consider to be one of the lower levels of overdimensional Specialized freight. I choose to run this way in this particular setup because I think that for me, this setup that I have right now allows me to move around the country and have the most freight available to me to allow me to keep moving and limit my deadhead and make the best money I can make and not have a considerable amount of downtime or deadhead miles to get to loads. So certainly not the top tier of the Specialized world, what I do, but I do believe that, in my opinion, for my personality and the way I run, I like to run hard. I like to continue to move. I don't like a lot of downtime. So personally, I think that the 6-axle setup that I have, is probably the best setup for what I do. Not necessarily the best setup for everybody, and certainly not the top tier, the king of the hill, we'll call it, of the Specialized world. There are some guys out there pulling some enormous stuff, and I love seeing it, and I love talking with those guys. And I've been there. I've pulled a lot of that stuff. So I got a lot of respect for them and what they do, and it doesn't fit my personality. I don't like waiting on police escorts. I don't like having a lot of downtime and a lot of that freight. You're waiting on cranes a lot, and they're certainly getting paid to wait on those cranes, that's for sure. But I like the money. I just don't like the downtime. So for me, this setup is best for what I do, and this whole channel is going to be based around what I do with this setup. I am gonna talk about the other tiers, we'll call them, of Specialized, but for the most part, what I'm going to cover is the things that you can do with a 6-axle setup. My trailer is a 40-ton trailer, which means 40-ton means the trailer is capable of handling up to 80,000 pounds in a 16-foot area. So in any given 16 feet of my trailer, I can put 80,000 pounds. The catch to that, which you'll learn when we start talking about permits, is you can't permit 80,000 pounds on most trucks. On my particular setup, because of my empty weight, I can't permit 80,000 pounds on 6 axles. So the trailer, I am able to use this trailer for everything I can possibly use it for, because it is more capable than what my axles will allow me to do. So, now that we defined Specialized and talked a little bit about setups, there's some basic materials that I think you should have when you're starting out in a Specialized world that are going to greatly increase your chances of success, and also greatly reduce the amount of mistakes or headaches that you have because of something you didn't know. So I'll go ahead and get into those basic items that you need. First off, probably most importantly, is you need the right trailer. You need the right trailer for what you're looking to do, what kind of Specialized you're looking to haul, what your customers require you to have. You need to have the right setup, the right trailer. Sometimes it's an RGN, maybe a step deck, low pro step deck with ramps, maybe a standard step deck, maybe a flatbed. Perimeter style trailers, multi-axle heavy haul trailers, all of these are options, but you need to have the right equipment for what your customers need. You also need to know the limitations of that equipment. It doesn't do you any good to have a piece of equipment if you don't know what that thing can do. That's incredibly important too. Very, very versatile trailer. Highly recommend it for getting into this. A low pro step, an ultra low pro step with a set of ramps is probably the most versatile trailer in the flatbed world. It gives you the ability to run some RGN freight because you can load, the deck height is so low that there's a lot of RGN freight you can still put on that trailer. But it also allows you, because it's so light and easily loadable, it also allows you to get into the flatbed market as well. Having that low pro step will give you the ability to search step deck and flatbed freight as well, and most likely be able to haul it. So very versatile trailer, very great trailer. I took a step further and got the RGN Retach. I chose this, the company I work for, we chose this trailer for a couple different reasons. Number one, it has a loadable deck, loadable front deck. Just in case I need to load something on the front deck, I have that ability. Some of the other things in my type of Specialized market, some of the things that you're going to want to have is the oversized banners and flags. These are obviously pretty important. Banners are, there's actually a definition most states give on how big the banner has to be. I've never heard of any state actually enforcing that. In fact, I see some guys running around that have magnetized flags like I do, or a magnetized sign like I do, that have actually cut their sign into 3 pieces, and that, according to the definitions of the dimensions of signs that are required, that's not supposed to be something you can do. And guys do it all the time, and nobody ever bothers them. So I don't think it's really as, the dimensions of the sign itself is important. But you do need one on front and rear of the unit. So you're going to need 2 of those. For sure, without a shadow of a doubt, you need 2 of those. One for the front, one for the back. Very good idea to keep a spare. These things get damaged, bungee cords break, how they're secured on brakes or whatever, and these flags have a way of disappearing. They also wear out kind of quick when you're running the Specialized a lot. They do wear out, so it's definitely good to have a spare flag as well, or signs. Flags are, by definition, are required to be on the corners of the power unit, which is the truck, and the rear corners of the trailer. Front corner's power unit, rear corner of the trailer. You also need them on the widest portions of the load. This is actually defined differently by each state. So you got to be kind of careful about how you do it. The best thing to do with your flags on the widest portion of load is flag everything. Anything that looks like it might be put on 4 corners of the load, if it's a box, Put 4 of them on the load if you can. Just flag it. Everywhere there's a wide spark, just put a flag. That's probably the safest way to run your flags and not be in any jeopardy of getting a citation or a DOT violation from a scale master or roadside inspection. But there is different evidence, and part of what I'm going to discuss here in a minute, there's ways of knowing what you got to do. So I'll get into that in just a minute. A couple of other things that are incredibly important to have, probably just as important as anything that you're gonna use for Specialized, is a tape measure. And I highly recommend a thick tape measure, like an inch, at least an inch wide tape measure, because you're outside a lot of times trying to take measurements. The wind is going to be blowing. You're measuring a long area. The wind's going to try to blow that thing around. So the stronger the tape measure, the better off you are. But you're definitely going to need a good tape measure. And I highly recommend, you can do it with a tape measure, but I highly recommend picking up a high pole measuring tool. I showed it, you saw it on one of my videos. I'm probably going to show it on a bunch more. I use it quite a bit. In fact, tomorrow morning, I'm going to remeasure this load. I measured it at the customer, but I'm going to remeasure this load just to show you guys that pole again. So I got a high pole measuring tool. Makes my life so much easier and so much faster. So I highly recommend it. Not a requirement. You could do it with a tape measure, but you're probably going to be making up cuss words while you're trying to do it with a tape measure, because it's going to blow around and it's very difficult. It makes it much more difficult. With the high pole measuring tool is by hands down one of the best things I ever bought for Specialized. Clevises and D-rings. If you're hauling equipment like I do, I haul a lot of bulldozer, heavy equipment, excavators. Clevises and D-rings, those are very, very important. I run into using, if you watch any of my videos with a piece of heavy equipment, more than likely I probably put those clevises on somewhere. So they are important to have. You could pick them up at Harbor Freight pretty cheap, so it's not something that you got to spend a ton of money on. There are a lot of customers out there just give them to you, so definitely not a requirement to have them, but certainly make your life a lot easier. Lighting is something that is very seldom ever talked about. I believe Missouri is one of the states, I'd have to look it up to be sure, but I think Missouri is one of the states that requires the lighting you have for when you're pulling an overdimensional load to be able to be seen 360 degrees. So all the way around your truck, and some of them even go as far as saying it needs to be seen from a half a mile at 360 degrees. I'm not 100% sure how in the world we would be sure somebody could see a half a mile, but that is a requirement. Not all states require you to have lights. They don't. Ohio, for example, is one that surprisingly, because Ohio has some pretty strict rules, and they actually are one that don't require lights at all. You don't have to have lights. You can leave them off. I turn mine on, and I generally just leave them on. The way I see it is, the more that the motoring public knows, the more the motoring public is aware of me being oversized or something being different than most semis about this, the better. So I run them just so the motoring public knows that, hey, look, man, there might be something weird here. You don't want to run into it. So not a requirement in Ohio, but I do run them. So lights are important. Overhead lights. I don't know that any state that requires you to have lights on the back of your trailer, except for Tennessee. And Tennessee has some goofy requirements. They require the lights to be rotating and be on the back deck, not built into the back of the trailer. So it's kind of another thing that's kind of goofy about Specialized, but most states don't require you to have rear trail lights as long as you got overhead lights, if they even require lights at all. The magnetized lighting, I have 2 strobe lights that have a magnet base on the bottom, and they're rechargeable, and they're actually strobing lights. Tennessee, for example, allows us to run at night up to, I'd have to look it up, but there is a certain dimension. I believe it's up to 14 foot, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But anyways, they will allow us to run at night. However, they do require you to put lights on the, not just a flag marking the widest portion of load, but a strobing light to mark the outside load if you're going to run at night. So those another thing, again, not a requirement, but certainly nice to have, especially this time of year when our days are very short and it's getting dark super early. You get into Tennessee, and being able to run in the evening in Tennessee is pretty nice. So if you want to run in Tennessee in the evening, you got to have these lights. So again, not a requirement, but certainly something you should definitely have. Probably the most important item that you need to pick up if you're going to start hauling Specialized, or you're currently hauling Specialized and don't have one, is a regulation book. I cannot stress how easy these books can make your life. There is some things about them, they don't all say everything you need to know, but there's a couple different books out there that I highly recommend. I have two of them here with me. This one is one of them. This is the United States Truckers Oversized Load and Pilot Car Directory. If you can see right here, there's volumes on here. So every year they put out a new one. Some things change, but not very often. This book, when you open it up, it lists just about everything you need to know. Lighting, travel times. This book actually goes as far as giving you a chart in here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but this is your daylight times. So they go as far as giving you a chart for every day of the year on daylight times that you can look up in this book. So very, very handy tool. The other one that I have found to be actually a little bit more useful than this one is the it's called Overload 411 Directory. This is your pilot car and overdimensional directory. This book also lists, very similar to the other one, lists everything you need to know when you need an escort, what size, under or over what size you need to before you need an escort. That is incredibly handy to know. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of companies and a lot of freight brokers that just don't know the rules. So don't have these books in front of them, don't necessarily know the rules. So they will book a load and rate it according to what they think it is to move it, not knowing that it requires a lot of different things. So I've run into it several times where customers of mine did not realize that I was going to have escorts, or I was going to have police with me, or in Indiana, anything over 15 foot in Indiana requires a bucket truck to go with you. That is in that book. I said it in one of the earlier episodes. This isn't about, it's actually impossible for you to know everything there is to know about hauling Specialized. But if you know where to find the information, then you know everything. So it's important to have these books and at least have that resource available, so you know you can pick that book up and look at it and possibly get the answers. Most likely going to get the answers you want. Also, what that book doesn't cover, your permit will probably cover. Permits have a ton of information on them. A lot of permits have a ton of information on them about what you can and can't do under the guidelines of that specific permit. Some states, most states also have what they call a provision sheet. Overdimensional provision sheet is the rules that are accompanied with when you receive a permit from the state. Ohio, their provision sheet is called an OS1A. It is required by the state of Ohio for the OS1A to accompany the permit while it's in your possession. So you have to have an OS1A with your Ohio State permit. Otherwise, that permit is invalid, according to the state of Ohio. However, that provision sheet that you can get for just about every state, some don't have them, but just about every state has a provision sheet. Those provision sheets have a ton of information on them. So some of them kind of read like lawyer talk. So you got to kind of like read through it a few times and figure out what the heck they're trying to say by it. But for the most part, they're pretty simple to understand, and they'll just list the requirements that you have on for whatever load you're hauling. So pretty important to have those. They're also available online. You can actually go online and download every single one. There's a website, and I'll do my best. My wife actually found it at one point. I'll do my best to find that website again, and I'll put it in the description down below, so that you can resource that as well. I highly recommend just printing that stuff out and having a copy, a binder in your truck, a binder like this. A binder like this in your truck that has all of the state's provision sheets in it. Then you never have to worry about it. Then you always have the provision sheet. If that's a possibility for you, I highly recommend it. If not, you could get it electronically. That's another thing. Used to be, back in the day when I started hauling Specialized, you had to have a paper copy of your permit, had to have it with you. Sometimes we'd walk out of somewhere, a big old stack of papers with us, and those were all of our permits. And I think the more that our government got involved in the whole Green Act, and everybody wants to save trees now, they did away with that. And now most states will allow you to have an electronic permit, and they're perfectly fine with that. Most of the time I have my permit right on my cell phone in my email, and I'll pull up to a scale and I'll just pull it up on my phone, hand them my phone, and they check the permit right like that. I did have a friend of mine, he was stopped at a scale. I think he was stopped for a roadside inspection in Wisconsin, and the inspector that did his inspection told him in the state of Wisconsin that is not accepted, that you're not allowed to have electronic permits, you must have a paper copy. I didn't know that. So it was kind of good that, unfortunate that it happened to him, but kind of good for me for education. So there you go. Wisconsin's one. You're going to want to print that thing, which brings me to something that I think would be extremely useful for most people. I have one. A lot of guys have one. Get yourself a printer. If you're pulling stuff like this, especially if you're going into ports, get a printer. Get a Bluetooth printer. I have a Canon printer. I'll try to show it to you. I'm sure I'll show it to you in one of these episodes. I have a printer in the truck. It's back there. Bluetooth right to my phone. I just set it up, put power to it, hit print, and it spits the page right out. So incredibly useful. I think I paid $250 for that thing or so, and it's been worth every dime. If you have to have something printed out, chances are you're either going to do it at a truck stop or you're going to do it at your customer. Customers, you might get lucky and they won't charge you for it. Truck stops, you're going to charge you like $2 a page to print something out off an email. So it pays for itself pretty fast. It is a healthy initial investment at $250, but it does pay for itself incredibly quickly. So those are some of the items. I kind of want to keep this as short as I can. Those are some of the items that you're going to want to have hauling Specialized if you're stepping into this market, or maybe you're a veteran in this market and hadn't thought that, man, I need to get that. These are definitely things to think about and try to get in your arsenal of tools to make yourself successful in this market.